Cool. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and set the stage for us, and we'll dive in. Make sure we're recording. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Alex Biale. My co-founder here, Reese Williams, is also here. We started Domestique together a little over 5 years ago. We've worked together for 12 years, which is, way too long. We focus on all things go-to-market operations. And one of the things we try to do is connect with some of the smartest people that we know to talk about some of the most difficult topics, and treat these as masterclasses, and real life conversations. So hopefully you're going to get a healthy dose of some thought leadership, but also some practical takeaways here. I am very excited about this conversation for two reasons. One is, this is maybe the most common question Reese and I get from our customers, our prospects, candidates who are interviewing for Domestique is, how do we deploy AI across our go-to-market tech stack? That has been the number one question for years now. But there's a more specific question that we're starting to get, which is, should AI be the control tower for how we as a go-to-market team interface with our systems, or should we use it for point solutions to solve one-off problems? I've got a lot of questions. We're going to dive in. And today we are joined by a good friend of mine, a former boss and a current mentor, Paul Wilson. Very jealous of where he lives, very jealous of his job. He's one of those operators that gets all of the systems, gets into the weeds, but can fly at maybe the most strategic level. And I think that for a lot of folks on this call and a lot of folks watching, it's going to be a lot of technical operators trying to figure this out. And this is one of those topics that requires a brain like Paul. So Paul, I know you're incredibly busy. Thank you for taking the time. Do you want to give a little bit of an intro before we dive in?
Sure. Thanks very much. Appreciate the really kind words. Paul Wilson, I'm a 20-plus year veteran of the go-to-market systems and operations landscape. I have had the great opportunity to have roles on the client side with large customers, spent time inside at Marketo through the Adobe acquisition. I was at Slack through the Salesforce acquisition. I've been a solution architect and consultant for 20-plus years in the CRM and marketing technology space. So I've had the great opportunity to see the evolution of the birth of Salesforce in the landscape. I remember CRM systems that were on-prem before Salesforce existed. And I've been through the iterations and the developments of everything across the landscape to where we are at today. And today I am very blessed and lucky to have a role at a company called Coastal. Coastal is a 600-plus person Salesforce-focused agency that specializes in enterprise transformation on all of the clouds that Salesforce has. Coastal was acquired earlier this year by TCS, so that's Tata Consulting. So we are now part of a 600,000 person organization that focuses really on this space. So I've had the opportunity to work with mid-market and up organizations who are working on understanding and grappling with how do you connect current business processes and operations to the promise of what AI is offering, and where is it realistic and reasonable to do so, and what are all of the variable layers involved in those conversations. So I have seen in 9 months a absolute devastating transformation around what it means to be in this space. And you're grappling with understanding what to do next. You are with everybody in that state. So there are no right answers. any of the talking head stuff that Alex and I come up with today is like 96% speculation, because no one's done this yet. We are really all trying to navigate this in real time. So very excited for the opportunity to chat.
Awesome. Well, there's a couple points there that I want to just kind of drill in on, and that'll kick us off. Which is one of the reasons we wanted to start talking with Paul is because he's got the perspective on what the enterprise, what the hyperscalers are doing, which is really valuable for the mid-market, right? It's okay, well, what are the big dogs doing? What are the best of the best doing, and how can we model that? The other point that you made, which I think is really important, is we don't know what we don't know yet. There are no best practices yet. There is a good chance that I'm going to come to you in 18 months and ask to rerun this exact webinar with what we've learned, and we're probably going to have fundamentally different answers. And that's okay. And so one of the things that we encourage our clients, our team to do is like lead with curiosity here, and don't get too far over your skis on any one bet, because the technology is changing all the time. So one of the most common questions that we get that I want to kind of start with is, do businesses need a CRM anymore, right? I mean, we get this question all the time, right? It's like, well, if I have Claude, and maybe today a customer is using HubSpot or Salesforce, whatever it is, as the CRM, they've got some other tools connected to it. Do I even need that? Or can I just run everything out of Claude? What's your initial take on that?
Yeah, there are a couple of different paths we can take. And I think I'm going to try to stay focused on sort of 3 lanes around that topic. The first lane is, do you want to be in the business of software development for the rest of your operational landscape? So that's one. The second is consistent business process operations, because the notion of what AI capabilities come up with, at the moment, they're deterministic. They can come up with new things. So you can convince an AI that, no, you are allowed to give clients a discount that you're not really supposed to be allowed to. And then the third thing is the cost variable and the unknown landscape of what will this end up costing. So sticking to that middle lane, the idea of whether or not you should. I think it's very telling that Anthropic is a very large Salesforce customer. And when you think about a CRM is a set of software-based capabilities that are written in programming language and have rules. And so you think about the whole lead to cash landscape. When a person fills out a form, does a thing, gets routed, passed to sales, like all of those rule-based capabilities are driven through a set of software rules. So if you think about using Claude as your CRM, you don't want it to come up with a new way of doing things every time. So you want to tell it to make a set of rules. So you then basically become someone in the world of building software, which you can do. And so I think it's easy to underestimate the vast complexity, particularly in the mid and enterprise market, of what is built into your CRM. So if you think of a CRM as leads, accounts, contacts, and opportunities, and that's it, you start to undervalue the rules around which products can be on what opportunity and in which geography the permission sets for marketing are like this or they're like that. Or you miss the complexity of, does this customer really have entitlement to open this support case or not? Like, there are a lot of details codified into your CRM. So if you start thinking, well, I could just use Claude, you need to make sure that if you do that, you have all of the rules somewhere written. And so then you become a software developer. And so do you want to have to say, oh, wait a minute, we have a new product launch coming out and it prices things differently, so we need to make a different capability. So you get into all of the whole ecosystem. And you absolutely can. You can then say, I have a tailored, specific set of capabilities. I don't need everything else that Salesforce or HubSpot wants to sell me. I really just need this thing. And so it fit for you. But do not underestimate that there is still work. There is still all of the variables around codifying what you need. And then that third point, right now, we're in the land grab of AI at almost no cost. So there are not the cost, we aren't really bearing the costs of to maintain that software. So you could go out and build a very robust, bespoke capability that manages everything in your business today. And then 9 months from now, when Anthropic or Chat or after saying, okay, we now need to start making some money, it becomes very expensive for you to update that mechanism because you're not actually a software developer, but you had Claude write software for you, and now it needs to be maintained. So
you just brought up so many good points that I want to drill in on. You're getting some love in the chat already. Also, I'm a bad host. I should have said this to everybody. I'd prefer this to be a conversation. If you have questions, jump into the chat. I'll do my best to keep an eye on there. Reese will hold me accountable, or feel free to just come off mute and interrupt me and ask your questions. So you brought up several really good points there that I know that we are dealing with, so I imagine a lot of others are dealing with. One is this idea that yes, technically with AI, we'll use Claude as an example, you can do this. Now, just because you can, does that mean that you should? And I think that's that next question that you're asking. And you're bringing up some really interesting points. Two examples that came to my mind almost as like a PTSD response was routing and anything to do with CPQ, that sort of quote to cash. Are we discounting? Are we not? What line items go? Just the idea of trying to rebuild what something like a lean data has already done so well within Claude, you might spend 6 months to quote unquote perfect it. Oh, and then by the way, leadership comes in and says, actually, now we're opening up to EMEA. And instead of looking at annual revenue as the segment breakdown, we're going to look at employee count. You now have to go redesign the entire system. And maybe you're not going back to square one, but think of how many cycles you're burning as the human doing the thing, right? And so it's, again, you can, doesn't mean that you should. I'm going to pull up one slide here. I put together a bunch of slides and then I realized like we should probably just have a conversation, but I do want to share something that, full transparency, I stole from SaaStr. Give me just a sec. I kind of put it all into one little slide, but they shared this visual to kind of talk to exactly what you're talking about, which is these hyperscalers. I think they're using Anthropic as the example, but this isn't specific to Anthropic. This is all of these hyperscalers are using tools like Clay, Lean Data, Salesforce, Gong, Ironclad, Slack. Like, I have to admit, before this came out, before some of our chats, I was just assuming that companies in that sort of special sphere were running their go-to-market systems on something homegrown that they've built that I'm too stupid to understand. When I saw this, that companies like Anthropic are using Salesforce as their core CRM, I both got very confident in the path that we're running down, but also had a million questions. So a question I have for you is, and I don't want this to be too tool specific, but this is Anthropic using six of tools that everybody on this call has worked with. Why these tools? And is there a right number of tools? Like, this is a pretty lean stack. There aren't 25 systems. Like, as you think about designing the go-to-market stack for the sort of mid-market and up, how are you thinking about running lean versus having a tool to solve every single problem? Because I was really surprised and relieved when I saw only 6 tools on here.
So there are a couple of paths on this one.
Yeah.
First of all, I think about what's the core business that someone is in, and Anthropic, OpenAI, like the core business that they're in is their product. And I'll try to use an analogy. Sometimes my analogies go a little too far, but let's imagine.
Love it.
Imagine that you make wine. And if you were an individual that made wine, are you also going to manufacture bottles? Are you also going to manufacture the cardboard boxes that the bottles go in? Are you also going to manufacture the corks? Your product absolutely needs the bottle, the cork, the cardboard. It needs all of that, and that's important, but that's not your business. So what we're seeing with these companies is they're focusing around their core business, and their core business is delivering their product to the market. And when you look at the go-to-market stack of what the capabilities are that are in the market, it may be that 2 years from now, absolutely, Anthropic's like, yep, we're no longer a Salesforce shop. We've built something all on our own. But they knew that the fastest, most stable way to go to market initially was to use products. And there are mature products that are in the market that are stable, and they're looking at that composability. So when you look at the tool stack that they use, they're composing the tool stack that they need across the customer journey. So
it's very cool. I was again surprised and relieved to read this article when it came out. So one of the questions that we get a lot of is HubSpot, Salesforce are two of the obviously the most, by far and away, the most common CRMs. Very good for different needs, right? I think we're all in agreement that Salesforce is appropriate for those sort of larger firms. We're seeing a lot of new CRMs, new sort of AI native, right, CRMs come onto the market that claim to do all of these 6 things within its one tool. And we're seeing the sort of, middle end of the mid-market say, hey, do I need all 6 of these tools, or can I just go get one of these new kids on the block and then plug Claude into it? Because I don't want my reps to ever log into Salesforce. I just want them to prompt into Claude. And full transparency, we don't know exactly where we sit on this right now. I think our initial take is, if you're, incredibly early stage, $5 million in revenue, and you're like just getting going, okay, like go with path of least resistance. But there's a cost to the migration that you will have to do at some point when you achieve scale. And so the way that we look at it is, well, what are your growth and scale goals? Because at some point, you're going to end up with some version of this. Now, do you want to step into that now and get it right from the start, or do you want to kick that can down the road? The other point. So on the other end of the spectrum, and then there's a question here that I want to make sure I get to.
So you got that question? Yeah, finish your thought.
Yeah. Thank you, Reese. On the other end of the spectrum, we see some companies terrified of, and I'm dramatically oversimplifying this, but plugging in Claude to their stack and letting reps, CSMs, commercial operators interface directly through Claude, and rightfully so. The question that I have is there a data quality process standardization threshold that companies need to achieve in order for a version of this to work, right? Like, and some examples for the audience, right? From a process perspective. So Domestique, for those of you that are new, we talk about this idea of strategy, process, technology, data, enablement in that order, right? We're having a very technical conversation today. But from our perspective, the prerequisites are having the process and the strategy aligned and dialed. If you've got one commercial leader that thinks you're running an ABM play and another that thinks it's solely inbound, and then another that's trying to build a product-led growth motion, and if your opportunity records, if half of them don't have an updated close date, oh, and by the way, if you don't have enrichment, covering, let's say, 80% of your database, should they plug in Claude to allow reps, as the example, to interface? So I'd love to get your take on whether or not there's a threshold for strategy, process, data fidelity before somebody can even step into this.
To me, the reality is tool agnostic. The reality is you need a business rules engine that supports your processes and is fed by good data. And how you construct that rules engine, it may be that it's a composed landscape where you have a marketing business rules engine, you've got your sellers, pre-opportunity are managed by the same infrastructure, so the cadences and whatnot that marketing and sales are doing are running from the same engine. Then as soon as you get to an opportunity create, you have more of a CPQ business rules engine that knows everything. Where those engines come from, whether it's locally designed or off the shelf, if you are constructing this, underneath is the customer journey. It's the business process that you want your customers to start from and get to. And foundationally, what I'm seeing in the marketplace is all of the capabilities that support those composable moments in your business rules engine. Everybody is in the market offering those capabilities, and you can build them yourself now too using tools like Claude. So I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer. That said, in the economics of running the go-to-market operations for an organization today, I would suggest you treat shiny toys as innovation labs that you want to, be inquisitive. Everything is changing. You shouldn't be static or stale in your skills or what you're offering your employers or your own business, but be somewhat skeptical, because we are also seeing the economics of various entities. Focus has been acquired, Apollo's in flood. Like, there are a lot of companies offering products that may or may not have a long-term viable path through the next 3 years. So I absolutely think everybody needs to innovate on their own customer journey offering. What can they do to make the customer's journey better? What can they do to get data in a more easy fashion and maintain the accuracy of that data? I think that is all great work that needs to be done, but be skeptical about the economics. Be skeptical about what's the renewal going to look like if they give it to me for basically free for the first year, and then I become hooked on it, and then the renewal is 5 times what I thought it would be. So these are the danger places right now that I think people should be sensitive to.
Yeah, you've brought up this. Actually, before I move on, there's a question in the chat. Yeah, sorry, there's a question in the chat. Did you have a chance to read it?
I saw it pop up. So.
You saw it pop up. Okay. Blair, if you want to jump in and chime in, you're more than welcome to. The question is, do you think local models will ever be at the point where that dependency on cloud models like Claude goes away? Even if the cloud models are always going to be superior, will there eventually be a convergence where local is simply good enough for the job, whatever the job is, whatever the business process is?
Yeah, I've actually tinkered with local models on a Mac Studio here with the Salesforce new headless CRM to be able to demonstrate the ability to interact with a local model. And the local models are very, very good. So as long as you aren't looking for real-time, real-world dynamic capabilities, then the local models are very good. They're very stable and they're inexpensive to maintain and run. So in what I was trying to define was a CPQ agent, an agent force agent that's running off of a local machine that behaves properly and answers questions and helps sellers cross-sell. It totally worked great. But those local models are not really as good. If you'll prepare me for this sales call, it can tell you some stuff, but it's not going to be the latest, greatest. So I think local models are absolutely powerful and should be almost a leading part of what you tinker with and explore with first.
Yeah, cool. That's a good answer. I want to stay on this sort of prerequisites topic for a little bit, just because I think this is where a lot of folks are getting stuck and either shy or just like completely sprinting past some of the what must be true points. What do you think are some of the business processes that let's say that we're talking about B2B SaaS, right? Just to give it like a concrete example, like what are some of those business processes that you think are fundamental to, again, being a prerequisite to getting this right, to be able to start to step into this? Like, for example, one thing that we think of a lot, which you've touched on a couple of times, is this idea of your customer journey. Whether you refer to it as life cycle stages, customer journey, like you really want to get that dialed from our perspective, because that's the backbone of everything else, right? And all of your if-then statements and all of your, that's one of those first points, right? Is this a prospect or is this a customer, right? Is one of those first things that you really want to get dialed on. I guess one, do you agree with that? And then two, like what are some of those, because we also want to encourage, this sort of speed of adoption here, but again, it's this balance that we're trying to find of like your CRM and business processes don't need to be perfect. They're never going to be. And if you wait for them to be perfect, you will be behind. But you can't have half your database without a life cycle stage, as an example, right? And so are there thresholds and are there business processes that you think like, okay, you got to have these few things dialed and then you can start to step into it?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, and I'm having a flashback. I think you and I, way back at an unnamed company based in Atlanta, had conversations about, at the end of the day, a customer doesn't know what funnel stage they're in. No one's told them if they're a this or a that or their sales stage, whatnot. They don't care. Best brand experiences are the brands that it is absolutely seamless that you interact with them. There's no friction. We can all think about brands that are just there. They're great. To interact with them, it feels like it's a part of your life, your experience. It's not abrupt. At the core promise of what AI can unlock, to me, it's that customer journey experience where data is the backbone. And we're in a time now where the telemetry that gets created is vast. So if you're starting to think about what tool can do what, before you think about those tools, think about that data lake and having all of that customer journey in the data lake, because what that unlocks is you can then say, what is the customer current journey state for this account? What are the personas within that account, and what are the journey gates we want to see those personas coming through? So if it's a buyer, like a group of buyers from an account. We know that the account is a prospect, and we know that these buyers are the buying committee that we need to convince. There's this one individual who's much farther along, but they aren't the decision maker. So how do we tailor and meet that individual where they are and influence the other people? Well, all of that is going to be informed by a rich and vast data layer that AI and agents can then help you curate. It may be that the AI is an internally supporting tool that lets Reese know that the next time he speaks with this account, suggesting this might be important because these other individuals at that account were having this other problem elsewhere, and so he can then pick up. Or the agent itself might be able to one driving the interaction and popping up in a app and explaining something or whatnot. But data becomes the vast toolkit that systems can navigate. And that's where the human factor to me comes back into the formula, because there is no tool in the marketplace today that can help curate and configure all of that ecosystem so that it behaves appropriately. Saw a hand get raised.
Yeah, it's a solid answer. I love the focus on the customer and their experience with your brand. Josh, you wanna chime in?
Yeah, I will. So I feel like when I hear you asking that question, Alex, like,
Yeah,
there's something that can maybe even reframe the question. And I'd love to hear if you guys think differently from me on this. So you're saying, like, when is it the appropriate time to bring in AI? And you're saying, well, part of what's really important is to make sure that the data is clean data for the AI to work with. I think that's correct. And so it's correct in that depends on what you're trying to do with bringing AI in. If you're trying to bring in an AI agent and your data is crap, the response of the AI agent is going to be crap. But that's not necessarily saying that you're not ready to bring in AI, because what I'm seeing with a lot of my clients is they're like, oh, our data is horrible. What do we do about it? And do you know what one of the best answers to that is? Get Claude to analyze your data and see where you have holes, what are the repeated mistakes you're making. And it is so good at analyzing that data in a way that like a team of 100 people takes them weeks to do it. The question might not be just like, when do you introduce AI, but it might be like, where is the first problem that we use AI to solve?
That's a great point, Josh. And that's one of the coolest things I've seen recently, and I'm going to sanitize and not say company names, but a upper mid-market account was trying to was in paralysis about moving forward with AI because they did basically what you described. They took a tool and looked at the data, and the tool was like, yeah, you got a ton of holes. There's a ton of mystery around why things are the way they are. And they were stuck until one of the brighter, don't mean that, that's not a judgment call. One of the individuals who's more of the innovation kind of mindset in the organization said, well, if you look at the inconsistencies of what they're seeing in the data, what would happen if we looked at Workday and organization changes and HR information about when people started, when a new CMO or a new CRO came in, and what the impact was on the funnel and the data. And they were able to correlate and see that every time a new C-suite individual arrived, new marketing stages were defined, new sales stages were defined, and all of a sudden, all of the data had these ripples in it. None of the data made sense, and they couldn't figure it out. And all of a sudden, this unlock happened, and they were able to normalize and clean their data. So understanding the history and time of what impacted the data can allow you to stabilize the understanding of that data. And then I think inherently, Josh, tell me if I'm wrong, and then start building that data that you do need. So even if your old data has gaps or it's not, you just can't use it, great. Move forward with good data and start getting all of the data you need.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And like, that's one of the areas that I think we've seen AI be most useful is helping clean that data. Because like, what did we do before AI? You had people going in there, writing a bunch of SOQL queries or SQL queries and taking a look at things manually.
Yep.
Well, your data is so big that, like, honestly, a machine is better at analyzing that than you are.
Absolutely.
And if you know how to do that, like, it's such a multiplier. And then once your data is clean, then it's like, okay, now what do we do with it? So it's like, when do we, or like, what problem are we solving with AI first? Not like, do we need AI at all? That's what I've seen, at least.
Yeah, that's a great, Josh. I'm really happy you jumped in and contributed there. It's a great reframe, and I think that's the right little switch. It's not whether or not to use AI. I think the answer, I think we all agree, use it. It's just when, where, and how. My immediate next question. It's almost like, Josh, you and I planned that. I'll slip you a 20.
I'm a plant.
I was gonna say, yeah, you're a plant here. I'll slip you a 20 afterwards, because that leads me into where I wanted to go next, which is around quality control and governance. Once we do what Josh says, right? So let's say that we start there, right? The data is a mess. It's a nightmare. We deploy an agent or a few to start to understand, okay, Paul, to your point, well, every time that there's a commercial leader change on the HR side, core business processes fundamentally change. And even if we're just calling, an MQL this and now this, it does, from a data perspective, break things like timestamps and attribution models, and then credits and reports. And let's just say we get to the point to where it's clean, whatever clean means, right? It's not going to be 100%, but clean enough. In this new world order where, okay, now AI is being adopted, and maybe we're not quite at the control tower, gold standard here, but we're starting to step into it. From a go-to-market operations perspective, where maybe traditionally you'd be responsible for the CRM and processes, now you're responsible for organization settings and Claude and skills, and ensuring that those skills are actually doing what you want them to do and not offering a discount just because a rep asked for one. How do you maintain data quality in a world where maybe you're starting from clean data and reps, CSMs, field managers are starting to interface directly through Claude into the stack? How do you begin to think about that?
And the discipline around data governance, I think, is rapidly evolving to address kind of the gap that you're thinking about, or the space that you're thinking about.
Yeah.
And it's almost the core data. And so core data is the clean data that is required for business rules to function appropriately.
Yep.
And stabilizing and codifying where that core data resides and how it's protected is critical. Then the lifecycle and journey transactions data become point in time data points with their own metadata that says, Alex had a call with Reese on this day. Here were the topics. Here's the transcript. Here's the summation. This was the tone of it. All of that cloud of go-to-market operations transactional information circles around the core data that the business rules need for the business to function. And the customer experience in that customer journey is the synergy of those two things together. So the core data about the relationship that we have as vendor and customer needs to be protected and stabilized and kept clean. And so you need to have the rules and the systems that ensure that when, this company acquires that company and who the executives are, like all of that critical, stable information, you need to have that data stabilized. And then the first party data around the transactions, the conversations, the who did what, who visited what page, all of that becomes the lake that is then informing me as an individual when I fill out a form on the domestic website. And it's like, oh yeah, Paul's from Coastal. We've done business with Coastal before, and it was good business. It was profitable. So we're going to give Paul the gold star treatment on the website versus Paul's coming from this little company that doesn't match our ICP. So we're not going to try to offer him a meeting when he's on the site, but we're going to offer him more information because, business is business. We want to have that. But at the core, it's ensuring that you do have a landscape and a data classification that says core data is protected data, transactional go-to-market customer journey data is informative of that customer experience.
That's an interesting way of kind of reclassifying the different types of data. It also helps me kind of rethink maybe the different fidelity standards for each, right? Again, going back to I'm always thinking about the prerequisites, and then Josh, now I'm going to add your layer of the prerequisites and then that very first step, right? That gets me thinking about, well, the prerequisites are likely different for each of those different data stuff. Like, do all of your timestamps of exactly when Paul and Alex met need to be perfect in order for you to step into this? No. Do you need to have a standardized definition of what a customer is? Yes. Right. Yeah. Those are two fundamentally different things.
Yeah, and the semantic layer is absolutely hypercritical in all of this because,
right.
I think the near next evolution of where we're going to be able to get to is, instead of it being that Paul from Coastal filled out a form, so Coastal is an MQL, we're going to be able to get to a point where it's like, okay, so Paul from Coastal filled out a form. Paul is interested in more information, but Paul's role is not a decision maker. Paul's role is not one that's going to say Coastal is going to be MQL. So we're going to keep nurturing, and then we're going to have a prospecting agent go out and find other people at Coastal, because obviously Coastal is a market because Paul filled out a form. Paul's not the person we want to start with, though. So we're going to go off and we're going to find the name Eric Barrage, who's the CEO. That's who we're going to try to get Reese to put a call to, because we know Coastal's in the market, but we don't want to be stuck with Paul first. We want to try, and then Reese gets on the phone with Eric, and Eric's like, yeah, Paul's looking for work. He's not. And then you're like, okay, yep, deal's done.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of evolution once you start having more telemetry that you can get to.
Very cool. I have one more question before our last topic. If there's a chance we actually end this on time, it never happens here. One of my final questions is, which you're starting to tease out here, is where do you recommend mid-market go-to-market operators kind of start, right? One of the most common things that we're seeing is, whether it's a Salesforce centric stack or HubSpot, does it, again, tool agnostic, a customer will, or a customer of ours or a prospect, whatever, a company will buy Claude, give everybody a license, set a usage limit, they'll roll out a handful of skills that are okay. They'll open up their connectors with a lot of their stack. If they're smart to begin with, maybe it's only read only, just to kind of get it rocking and rolling. But then it's like, okay, well, when do you make the leap from Mr. and Mrs. Rep? You are no longer logging into Salesforce. You are logging into Claude. One, I guess, is that a reasonable goal for the mid-market? And two, how do folks start to step into that process?
I'm going to go back to the conversation earlier about business rules engine. And I think that that's one of the elements to bear in mind here. So what I'm seeing companies grapple with is kind of what you're highlighting, and that is spend has shifted. If you're trying to sell services to companies who have HubSpot or services to companies who have Salesforce, and you're speaking with those teams are kind of like, yeah, I don't have money for services right now, because all of that money is now over coming out of the finance org, paying the bill for Claude, paying the bill for OpenAI. And I've seen some of those bills, and there are, 7 figures per month being spent. And the mystery is, and where you're identifying the moment is, how do you start translating AI spend to business process improvement? And I think what you need to look for is, in the way that you've described that capability step, you give people licenses and you give them access to Claude. You then say, here's the tool stack, here's the business rules engine. You can't really get to it though, so we want you to do good things, and you come up with quippy, fun emails that may or may not get opened and may or may not do things. You might say niftier things on a case that a customer has. You might be able to close that case faster, but it isn't really touching the business rules engine. Finding the processes that can be improved by AI that are respectful of the business rules engine is where you start being able to translate that AI spend into improved business process. So where I'm seeing it happening first is in lead to opportunity. So the ability of a seller to really understand what an AI SDR is capable of in getting those meetings booked, that facilitates maybe fewer SDRs, because the AI SDR is able to react with the right information faster. I'm seeing companies leverage prospecting agent type capabilities where it's like, okay, we know that Coastal's in the market. Paul's not the right person, but we do need to find the right person because Coastal is in our ICP, but this persona is outside of it. So let's find the other personas. And so those are the kinds of areas that I'm seeing companies start to translate that AI spend into real business processes. The other end of the spectrum, where it was, I think, one of the first areas that was most impacted, is support. And so the ability of AI agents to rapidly work and do well in that market is great. We've seen large companies falter around a little bit in that. I will call Salesforce out as one right now. It is terrible to try to get cases opened and worked and moved appropriately right now because everything goes through the agent, but companies are catching up. So find those elements of your business rule that are friction heavy. It could be CPQ. It could be your sellers are not doing a good job of identifying cross-sell or getting quotes out faster. So you don't have to necessarily expose that AI externally, but give your sellers more support. Give them coaching right within the app they're living in on how to do better when they're building those quotes.
It's a phenomenal answer. That's great. Okay. I think we have time for me to ask one more question, and then I want to, if anybody else has questions, obviously I want to let anybody chime in, which is, there's a lot of, in the domestique audience, it's kind of broken up into 2 fundamentally different groups of people. One is, stakeholders at customers, prospects that want to see if they know what we're doing and are generally interested at the high level, which is great. But there's a really strong, fun contingent of folks that are operators, the folks doing the job that we're talking about, that aren't trying to buy anything from domestique. They're like, oh, this is a community we want to engage. I have access to Paul. Like, what are the best practices? And so I want to talk about that group here for a second. And one of the things that we talk about a lot internally with how we up-level our team, how we hire, how we give career advice is, how are you thinking about the role of a go-to-market operator, whether it's marketing operations or sales operations, go-to-market systems, a Salesforce admin, whatever how are you thinking about that role as it's evolving? Because these skills are technically different and the function of them is different. And to keep bringing it back to your spend point, the potential positive or detrimental implications to the business are increasing. So the stakes are increasing. So how are you seeing the role evolve? And what advice do you have for folks that are in the middle of that transformation who are looking around like, I have no idea what the F I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah, so keep running into the burning building. So we are all in the business of running into the burning building. That's what go-to-market operations and technology people do. And right now, more so than ever, the skill set we require is the foundational understanding and appreciation of what goes into business process. Business process is humans, movement, and data. You then get all sorts of different technologies that help you move data across the humans to get that process flowing. Stay true to your understanding and appreciation of those foundations. The tool stack is moving all around us. The capabilities, the rapid ability to improve it, expedite it, everything. All of those technical skill sets, I think we're all pretty adept at knowing we can pick up those skills. And so when new capabilities show up, it's then being able to understand and interpret what is the impact going to be. So Josh was talking about looking at data and cleaning up data. It's us having that appreciation, understanding. It doesn't matter how shiny the tool is. It can't clean the data if the data is missing. So tell the tool, oh, by the way, when you get to this period of time, we have a great big gap. So that's a known thing. So these are tools that we use. So in the advice of what it is that we need to do as practitioners, it is forever staying ahead of what those capabilities are. Like I said, my first Salesforce org, I logged into it in 2003. I have a Mac studio. I am pushing and playing and tinkering and knowing and understanding, because I don't think I'm of any use to anyone if I can't really understand what are the minutia points of all of this, because there is no magic wand. There is no agent that solves it all. You can't say to Claude, here's my Salesforce login, I'm out. Like, it doesn't work that way. We need to still have the full understanding of everything that's there. Yeah, maybe 6 years from now, there won't be this much work, but the next 6 years are the 6 years that upping skills, understanding what's happening, and being on the front edge of this change is how you're going to be persistent in this industry for the next 10 years. So, and I'll be out by then. So you guys could take it.
No way. I'm gonna be pulling you back in. It's that Godfather 3 moment. I thought they were out and they pulled me back in. You're gonna be doing these webinars with me until you're 90.
Love it.
All right. Thank you so much for this conversation. I've only left a couple of minutes here for anybody else to ask questions. If anybody else has questions, comments, pushback, whatever, would love to hear from you.
Alex Blair just posted a question in the chat a minute ago.
Okay, cool. I'm doing a bad job at looking at the chat.
So
Okay.
concrete examples or guidance around speeding up the quoting process with AI. CPQ quoting specifically is a problem. We're working with a client whose biggest pain point is speed to turnaround quotes.
Got to kind of know what platform. Like, is it Salesforce? Is the old Salesforce CPQ? Like, it's difficult to make a technology suggestion without understanding what's the tech debt, cumbersome friction that you're dealing with.
Salesforce CPQ, yeah.
So they're going to tell you to go to Revenue Cloud. I can tell you that implementing Revenue Cloud is like doing your own dental surgery. It is really difficult. It's very challenging. The outcomes are good, but it is a very complex path to get there. Salesforce CPQ, the old steel brick, you're not going to be able to get the kind of agentic capabilities because there's nothing that co-resides with it. So unfortunately, I think I can't help too much on that one.
Nice. Okay. RIP CPQ. Any other questions, comments? Anybody want to, jump in? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I'm shocked we didn't go over. Thank you very much for the time, Paul. I know you're super busy. I always learn a lot from these. I come to these with a lot of curiosity and leave with even more questions and excitement. one of the punchlines I'm going to walk away with, right, is this idea of like keep running into the burning building, right? It's a great way to say it. I'm gonna steal that. If anybody has any follow-up questions as they start to think about this, feel free to reach out. Happy to make an intro. Happy to workshop anything. But this will not be the last of these we do. So thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody. Hope you all have a good day.
Great to see everyone. And if you want to connect on LinkedIn, I'm there.
All right.
See ya.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, see ya. Cheers.